My only problem with the tariffs isn't that it's going to hurt our position on the world stage. I also just don't think they're very effective in bringing jobs back. If you're trying to tariff in order to bring manufacturing jobs back, that it actually does that. Usually it just increases production costs, and most of the studies that I've seen says that it actually hurts domestic employment because a lot of companies become less profitable and so hire less people. Couple that with, there doesn't really seem to be a big unemployment problem, and we're getting rid of a lot of the lower wage workers from the country via these deportations. There's just a lot of factors that go into making these tariffs, especially like when they're just kind of being thrown out in a blind way, potentially really, really bad. If you want to see more content like this, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel and follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Rinyald. And if you disagree with anything in the video, make sure you join the Discord and we can have a chat sometime.
Has anybody ever told you look like Sonny Moore? I just had to ask that real quick. You know who that is?
Nope, not off the top of my head.
Skrillex?
Relics? No, I don't know.
No, Skrillex, the dubstep producer.
Oh, Skrillex. Oh, it's just because I have long hair, I guess.
No, the face shape too, bro. Like, honestly, like, you look like Skrillex. So, anyways,
thanks, buddy.
I wanted to ask that. I'm not a diehard Trumper. I did vote for Trump, but I don't trust him, just like I don't trust Elon Musk, and I don't trust a lot of people.
Okay.
So,
do you still consider yourself a supporter of Donald Trump?
Being that he's the person who is heading the executive branch of our country, I support him in the sense that I hope he does well for the country.
Well, I think everybody hopes that the U.S. does well, but I mean, like, do you support the majority of the things that he's doing? Do you think he's doing a good job? Do you regret your vote?
Overall, I've been satisfied. There's been a couple things that I think have been kind of like, come on, dude, but
I figure one of those things was probably the Epstein list, right?
I haven't dug enough into that. That's just something that just came out the last couple of days, and honestly, I've been working pretty hard, so I haven't had a chance to do a deep dive on it to the point, and I don't have the knowledge that I would like to have about it.
Yeah, I got that makes sense.
The stuff that I can say I didn't like the way that he handled talking to Zelensky, especially the vice president. I was like, this is really disrespectful. Like, you're making enemies where you don't need to.
I agree with that.
Yeah, it's just like, come on, man. Like, we got to be better than that if we want people to be pulling for us. Trying to say, oh, well, maybe we could have Canada. That's just like, he's got a big mouth. He's got a big ego. And so some of it, like, yeah, I'm like, okay, I know that he's just like, he's just like mouthing off. But at the same time, it's like, you got to try and reel that in, dude,
Yeah, sure. And that's a big problem that I have with Donald Trump too. I think his rhetoric is really, really bad. I obviously agree with that. When it comes to policy, do you, I assume you generally support Donald Trump?
We'd probably have to go through the policies, man. I'm not sure which,
just on mass, majority.
From what I've seen, yes, but again, that comes with the caveat of I am not the most informed person you can talk to on TikTok.
Yeah, sure, I get that. To make a positive argument instead of just asking you a bunch of questions. I think Donald Trump has been really, really bad. I think a lot of his economic policy has been very, very misguided, and I'm assuming that he doesn't keep reversing course on all of the tariffs repeatedly. We will see the bad recourses of that if he actually sticks to any plan that he says that he wants to propose. I think that the big beautiful bill was just a bunch of deficit spending, and it's not hard to make an economy look good on paper whenever you just deficit spend to cut taxes for the ultra rich. It's really not that hard to do, but it's probably not a noble goal. I would say that Doge was a complete and utter failure. I would say that his pardon of the people who invaded the Capitol was disgusting. I would say that the treatment of illegal immigrants right now is disgusting, alleged illegal immigrants. I think that his handling of immigration is going to be pretty unmeaningful, other than kind of ruining our moral character on the world stage.
If we go much farther, I'm not going to be able to remember what you said in entirety.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Did you hook on to any of those in particular?
Yeah, we can talk about the ones you brought up.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna start with the the dang man, yeah.
Started with the tariffs.
So okay, yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
Appreciate that.
Yep, I
So
gotcha.
the tariffs, I do think I think that it's going to have a short-term negative consequence because we are going to be like, for obvious reasons. I think that you and I both understand that the tariffs are going to cause economic strain and everything. However, I do think in the long term, like we are suffering because there is everything is built in China, right? And by
Mhm.
not producing our own materials, like in anything, that it's hurting us a lot. And so I think if that is course corrected, that there will be a long term benefit.
Yeah, so I mean, we can kind of meet in the middle and half agree on that. I don't think necessarily onshoring certain jobs that have been offshored is a bad idea. The problem is that it seems like a lot of the jobs that would be onshored are very low level manufacturing jobs, which are jobs that we generally don't want to work, and our workforce is sophisticated enough to not work. It's better for the U.S. to focus on higher level manufacturing jobs instead of focusing on like steel, and as well as I don't think the tariffs are effective at doing that, and I think that the contradicting incentives or the contradicting reasons that the Trump administration has given for the tariffs just creates a lot of uncertainty in our markets, which is not going to be a good thing when we rely on investments.
Okay, so as far as their wording goes, I'm not going to try to sit here and try and defend them because, as we both already agreed, like the word choice of the administration is questionable at best. Uh,
Well, not. I
so,
mean, I agree,
so
but it's not just word choice
no, I'm
that
going
I
into
have
the
the
rest.
problem
I
with.
was
It's like,
brushing that aside. I
well,
was
I
going to go
mean,
to the rest. I'm not
even in regard to that point, my problem isn't necessarily the word choice. My problem is whenever they give a reason for these tariffs, like for instance, they'll say, okay, we're onshoring domestic manufacturing. That's why we're putting these tariffs in place. And then whenever any pushback gets given on that, they're like, okay, well, actually, I'm putting these tariffs in place as a source of revenue. And then they're like, whenever that gets contradicted by something, they're like, okay, well, I'm actually putting the tariffs in place to negotiate new trade deals. And those three things can't exist at the same time, but they'll kind of float in between those three justifications whenever they have a certain criticism of one of the points that they don't want to address. So, like, whenever they say,
Mhm.
okay, it seems like the tariffs aren't really good at bringing back manufacturing jobs. They say, okay, well, they were just here to negotiate trade deals. It's like, okay, if you were negotiating trade deals, you acknowledge that they're not going to bring back manufacturing jobs. How are you going to use them as a source of revenue or to bring back manufacturing if you're actually negotiating deals to offshore more jobs?
Okay, so I don't see that as contradictory because, and I do think that they can be simultaneously true because if you have, like you said, for example, some jobs you would want to bring back here in your position, right,
Mm-hmm.
and onshore them.
Mm-hmm.
So other ones you're saying you wouldn't want to. So let's say that you want to use your example of steel here. If you wanted to have
Uh-huh.
steel be done somewhere else, then the tariffs would make it to where you could potentially negotiate for better terms as far as steel goes while simultaneously onshoring some jobs that had to do with like rare metals and whatnot that could be mined up in like well, I don't remember exactly where the mine was. I think it was the Dakotas, and there was some in Texas. But yeah,
It's my impression
yeah,
that with these tariffs we're talking about a lot of blanket action. So it's not so much that like, we'll exchange some of this industry in exchange for some of this industry. It's more so like we're putting a blanket 10% tariff on certain imports, and if you come to the table then we'll move that down to a 6% on certain imports. That seems directly contradictory to bringing back manufacturing jobs. Especially when like the Liberation Day tariffs, they were all blanket tariffs. They were just on imports in general, and the reason that they gave was to shore up the trade deficits, which isn't even an issue. And then like specifically when Donald Trump is saying that we are going to be lowering the deficit by using these tariffs as a money making source, as like for governmental revenue. Do you agree that negotiating trade deals to bring those tariffs back down is going to like necessarily kneecap those tariffs' ability to bring in government revenue?
repeat the last sentence that you said one more time for me.
Do you agree that negotiating these new trade deals to bring down the tariffs are necessarily going to kneecap it as a source of governmental revenue?
Kneecap what is a source of governmental revenue?
The tariffs.
Um, this maybe the specific one that you're referencing, yes, but like you said, it was like an across the board thing. So maybe let's say the steel is kneecap, but because we didn't get lower rates on the advanced in manufacturing, then we're able to benefit there. So it's overall still a net gain in my mind. You know what I mean?
Um, say that again.
So like you said, it's a blanket tariff, right?
Uh huh.
And so if we have negotiations with, let's just stick with China because it's really easy, right? And everybody
Mm-hmm.
can visualize that.
Mm-hmm.
So we negotiate with China and they say, okay, well, we'll reduce the amount that we're charging you for. Or here's a good one, Canada with like cheese, right? They're charging us like a ridiculous amount on our what we exported there for cheese, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we negotiate with them, and they're like, okay, well, we'll reduce the tariffs that we had on you for cheese, and so now we're not being charged as much. We can be more competitive there.
Well,
And well,
I think Canada may have been a bad example to point to because now I'm pretty sure like the popular consensus in Canada and a lot of the like policymakers in Canada are talking about drastically cutting the trade relationship between Canada and the US because of these tariffs.
okay. So for the sake of argument, so that I can finish my thought real quick, and then
Yeah, go
if you
ahead.
want to get into the
Mm-hmm.
minutia of that, we can do so. Um, if you've got, so for example, if they agree, okay, well, we'll reduce how much we're charging in tariffs on cheese, then it makes it to where we can be more competitive in Canada on cheese. Now that doesn't mean that they negotiate with us on lumber, and so therefore on lumber it could make it to where it would be a more onshore industry.
Don't you think that if we were trying to bring back specific industries that specifically tailored tariffs and not blanket tariffs on all like these like 100 countries all at once would have been a more effective way to do that?
No, not at all. Actually, actually very much the opposite. I'm actually somebody who, just to give you a tiny bit of background on me,
Mm-hmm.
I'm a marketing major and have many years of experience in sales, negotiations, and manufacturing. And I work manufacturing now, actually.
Uh-huh.
And so, by being able to, by say putting a blanket policy in place and then saying, okay, if you want to come to the table, we can, then you gain the benefit of all. And then if somebody makes it to where you've got a better ability to reap benefits and realize revenues and profits in another area, then you'll be able to make modifications to those specific industries without affecting the fact that you're having an overall gain in other areas.
I so the problem is that I don't think that this is the way that the tariff policy is actually going into play. Well, first of all, um, a lot of these tariffs aren't actually going into play, period, because of the like dramatic effect it would have on the economy. It seems like most of the things that Donald Trump is relying on is just the threats of these tariffs. So that's one thing. But on top of that, um, it doesn't really seem like that's the way that Donald Trump is going about these negotiations. It just seems like he's going for blanket less imports. It doesn't seem like he's targeting these at super specific industry other than I think the only one I've seen that he's targeted at was steel.
Okay. That see how that's a refutation of what I said.
Because you're
Because like I
saying that
said,
if he's trying to if he that the goal is to bring them to the table on particular things, lowering the like creating
no,
trade deals
no.
to lower tariffs on particular things, and then you get to realize the profit from the other things while you do that. But that doesn't seem
Okay,
like
so I understand.
the strategy that Donald Trump is taking part in.
Okay, I see where the miscommunication is. So I'm not suggesting that Donald Trump is saying, okay, well, we're going to go after these individual things. He's saying, okay, we'll do a blanket one, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
And then if somebody comes to him and says, okay, well, look, we really want to have, like, say, for example, lumber or milk or cheese or whatever, then, okay, we can renegotiate that. And it doesn't affect the blanket of effect on other products. And so therefore you have a net gain overall, even if you lose or renegotiate some of the tariffs on the specifics. You get what I'm saying?
Do you believe that there would be more incentive to just go to someone else to get those goods?
Well, so you could make that argument, but we do have the largest economy by far,
Mm-hmm.
and so one there we do have a little bit of the we are in one sense holding all the cards. Now, does it reduce American hegemony? Potentially, but also that's to be determined, I think.
I don't know if that is necessarily to be determined. I mean, on certain situations, obviously, we're going to have more of a monopoly on certain products. I don't disagree with that. But I mean,
Yeah.
like, as the U.S. has been slowly pulling its role back as the world superpower, and as we're kind of showing a willingness to disrupt all of the standard patterns of global trade, it seemed like we've seen China cozying up to certain countries surrounding it. Russia can't really do that right now because of all of the exploits that they're in right now. But I mean, you could look at this isn't directly related, but you can look at the pause of U.S. aid, where whenever the funds from U.S. aid from the U.S. Stopped funneling in, you saw China really quickly pick up a lot of the links that the U.S. was missing. So
Mm.
that's one thing to point out. And then two, again, I don't know if I don't know if bringing these kind of jobs back is worth, one, has been demonstrated outside by putting on these blanket tariffs, or has been demonstrated to offset the harm to your economy that you're going to be doing because of because of these blanket tariffs. But on top of that, I don't know if that's a noble enough goal to basically potentially disrupt the entire functioning of our global markets.
Okay, so I want to start by talking about the China aspect because
Mm-hmm.
China and Russia have been trying to cozy up with people for a long time. I mean, the formation of BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India,
Mm-hmm.
China, South Africa, they were absolutely trying to work on reducing the American hegemony, and
Yeah.
they take political stances that also would try to isolate power in their own favor. For example, China has been having conflicts with India, actually attacking militarily their ships that were for commerce purposes and trying to stake their claim in in the seas, as well as conflicts with Indonesia.
Yeah, I
And there's
agree that that's the aim of China. I'm saying that we're leaving voids to where they can actually efficiently fill in those gaps.
so you're saying that they couldn't effectively do it before?
If the US is retreating on as in its role on the world stage, there's obviously going to be more room for another world superpower to fill those kind of holes that the other countries are relying on the US for. So it's not
But
saying that China wasn't trying to do it prior to this action. It's saying that the US is leaving much more room for China to gain influence on the world stage.
that's a really interesting take. Usually I hear the opposite because, like I said, besides the ones I mentioned, China's also been actively pushing in for activity and involvement in South America. At one point, I was considering moving to Ecuador and well, South America in general. The reason I settled on Ecuador is because I found out that China had major stakes in most of the other South American countries that I was, even remotely willing to move to. Um, and now they actually have staked a major claim in Ecuador as well, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't see that they're advancing their agenda as much now as before because of the kind of strong arm position that's been taken towards them as of Trump's administration's onset. So
Um, I mean, like I said, I mean, one of the big reasons why cutting the U.S. aid was so important, and this was referenced in one of the lawsuits trying to prevent the funding pauses, that we've already been seeing like Chinese government action filling in the gaps that have been left by the paused U.S. aid.
right, well, I can't say that I'm in favor of U.S. aid being intact regardless, because U.S. aid often ended up in the hands of those who it was not supposed to end up in the hands of. We have seen that it is consistently ending up in the wrong hands. For example,
I
oh,
mean, we can have that conversation separately. I haven't done as much reading on USAID, so I don't have. But the point that I'm making is just that it's just to illustrate the idea that if the US kind of pulls back from its role on the world stage, that another world superpower is necessarily going to fill that role. And that's kind of necessarily one of the downsides of lowering, global economic cooperation from the US, or the US being shown to kind of be willing to destabilize every world economy, is that people are just going to be necessarily less reliant on the US, and that's going to really decrease the US's role on the world stage.
so this again that surprises me because I usually hear the opposite when I speak with people on this matter. So I'm going to ask you a question about that real
Mm-hmm.
quick. Is it the case that you want the United States to have hegemony globally, global
Um,
hegemony.
define hegemony.
Hegemony, exerting major influence politically and economically and potentially militaristically, but in some way exerting influence and control over the rest of the globe in this kind of.
Um, Ideally, probably not. I would prefer it to be like a coalition um of like not just the US, not just the US's interests. But the problem is that if we like, it's kind of understood that the US does have that. And as far as I'm concerned, if the US reduces that role that it plays on the world stage, another worse world superpower is going to come in and fill that role. So I think that preventing China from coming into that role is probably a good enough reason why the US should stay in that role, at least insofar as it is.
Right. Okay. So I can agree with that. Actually, I do think that China is much less concerned with human rights.
Yeah.
I think we can agree on that. And so, I do agree that there is if a void exists, then China will absolutely be more than happy to step in and fill it. We've seen that same behavior from Russia.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there are also other players who are trying to enter the realm who are a little less nefarious. Maybe India, for example. Brazil is definitely stepping to try and become a power, and some of these players are better than others. So I do see what you mean about stepping into the void. As far as for the first aspect of what you said though,
Mm-hmm.
um, you want it to be something that is kind of. I want to make sure I understand you. What I heard you say is that you want to make sure that people are going to be able to, or different countries are going to be able to work together to determine, to basically be equals in the economic global economy is what I mean.
Equals necessarily. I don't think that's a possibility. I don't think that necessarily a way smaller country is going to have equal saying on the world stage as a way bigger country. But I mean, like some sort of, there's obviously going to be some preferential treatment to larger countries that have a larger stake and that contribute more to the global economy. But to say that the U.S. would be the only one with any say is probably not something that I would support.
Right, and I don't think we ever really approached that. And if America really just went off the rails, then I think that we would see like, okay, you know what, you guys want to be like that, then like, fine, be like that. But we're not really seeing that kind of um, kickback, and I think it's because we have been dealing with disproportionate tariff levels coming deal as far as American exports versus imports,
Well, I
and
mean,
so.
are you saying that the globe is not pushing back against the tariffs from Donald Trump?
Well, what I'm saying is that I don't think we've seen. I'm saying kickback to the level where they actually cut the United States out of their trades entirely. I'm saying if that were the point, if they got to that point,
I mean,
then
like we saw China and Japan and South Korea in talks to make a trade block. We saw Canada talking about drastically reducing the amount they export to the United States or import from the United States. Like those are really, really big deals.
okay, sure. And so, like I said, what I'm saying is if America were totally cut out of like trade and whatnot, that's what I'm saying. I was saying if there was an extreme situation where America was totally cut out of trade.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, sure. I wouldn't expect anybody to say that it would be a good thing for the U.S. to be completely cut out of trade, but I don't know if that's the bar, um, as to whether or not we should determine if these tariffs are going to be a good thing or not. Is whether or not the U.S. completely crashes and burns in its role in the global economy.
Yeah, I don't think that's quite what I was trying to say either.
Well,
Um,
I mean, maybe I'm misunderstanding. If I'm mischaracterizing you, please point out what were you trying to say?
um, I kind of lost my train of thought.
It's
I
okay.
know that that's quite what I was trying to say, but I can't completely define to you what I was saying. So
It's
beforehand, give
okay.
me a minute.
Don't
Let
worry
me
about it.
rewind for a second and refigure out where I was.
Uh huh.
Because we were talking about how you said that you didn't want China to be able to step into a void, and I was saying, yeah, I think that's been happening, and you said that you thought that we should, and I said I thought that I said I thought that you were saying that we should be equals, and you said that that's not something that'd be possible. because larger countries are always going to have an advantage over smaller countries.
Hmm.
And then that's when I said that I was making a statement, and I briefly referenced like that if we had a certain problem, then to where we were actually cut out of trade. I can't remember what my point was, brother.
Okay, it happens. Listen, I've got OCD. My therapist thought I possibly had ADHD. I lose track of thought a lot. We're all good. Um,
No, I don't. I don't think that that's the standard we should go by either. I was trying to demonstrate. I think generally that um, basically, I think I was trying to say that imports we were being taxed on. Okay, exports we were being taxed on more heavily than the imports we were bringing in from other countries,
mhm.
and so I don't think the countries are as mad overall um, as I think we would be expecting from this behavior. And I think it's and
Kind of,
okay,
but I
okay.
mean, part of that, part of something
There
to
you
keep
go.
in mind too is that the tariffs haven't even fully gone into place. Like I said, this is all being done off of the threat of the tariffs. Like he keeps pushing back the date on which he's going to put these tariffs in place. Period. Like the first date was Liberation Day, and then those got pushed back. Now I think it's August 1st is the day that he's talking about putting a lot of these tariffs in. And that he just sent a bunch of letters saying that these tariffs are going to be put in. We have whistleblowers from the United States saying these tariffs are never going to be put in. It's literally just a negotiation tactic. That like I would expect to see a lot more of the kind of repercussions that we would be expecting from the tariffs, not only just on the world stage, but also like domestically and economically, um, whenever the tariffs actually manifest into something tangible instead of just like vague threats from the president.
I thought that some of them had actually been put in place already.
Some of them, but not to the scale that Donald Trump is basically threatening.
Oh, okay, okay. So, all right, I understand. So, yeah, I think this is going to be where we end up leaving this particular aspect because, quite frankly, I think that there can be a lot of benefit realized from this because we have been getting the short end of the stick. But I also think that, you know, there is the potential that some void will be filled elsewhere. But also, if that is more equalized, that also seems like it's in your favor. But you're also concerned about the way that it's done, causing an impact. It seems to me on the perception of America by other countries, and so, and
Well,
which I can understand.
not just on the like that's not the only thing that I said was weighing down the perception of from the other countries. The other thing that was like our deportation efforts and like the way that we're kind of cozying up to some unsavory characters and the way that we're kind of taking advantage of a lot of unsavory tactics in order to go through with them. That's also like a big part of hurting our image on the world stage. And then just to we can talk about that as well if you want to, but just to make sure that I'm clear on my tariff position as well. My only problem with the tariffs isn't um that it's going to hurt our position on the world stage. I also just don't think they're very effective in bringing jobs back. It just doesn't seem like if you're trying to tariff in order to bring manufacturing jobs back, that it actually does that. Usually, it just increases production costs, and most of the studies that I've seen says that it actually hurts domestic employment because a lot of companies become less profitable and so hire less people. Couple that with there doesn't really seem to be a big unemployment problem, and we're getting rid of a lot of the lower wage workers from the country via these deportations, and then couple that as well with the idea that like the market uncertainty, whether or not these tariffs are or aren't in place, is going to have a lot of effects on investors knowing whether or not they want to do like a lengthy investment into the United States, because whether or not you're going to be facing like huge import and possibly export taxes due to retaliatory tariffs. There's just a lot of factors that go into making these tariffs, especially like when they're just kind of being thrown out in a blind way, potentially really really bad.
Yeah, I don't think that the tariffs are going to change whether or not people want to do business with us. In fact, like we're going to see. I don't think that that's something we're going to see. Um,
Well, isn't that necessarily the wait? So when you say that, you don't think the tariffs are going to change based off of whether or not people do business with us? Are you talking about
right.
like the um like the like domestic actors or like the individual actors talking about domestic investment, or are you talking about like on a global stage, like different countries doing business with us?
Um, Really, probably both, because on the as far as the global stage goes, yeah, they might have ties with one another as well. Like you were talking about, China and Japan entering into a trading agreement. Uh, they're also the Japanese and the South Koreans and the Chinese have a long troubled history with one another, and
Mhm.
so I don't see them just overnight deciding, you know what, I want to support this, because they are very ideological. Let's say,
Sure, yeah. The
more.
the reason that I brought that up is just to say that like there is clearly a void that or like some will for these kind of people to move away from the US as like a global or like a unitary trading body, because you can see actively right now South Korea and Japan in trade negotiations with China, even though they have like a very long checkered history of ideological differences.
Gotcha. So I wasn't familiar with the newer one, so I just kind of looked it up real quick.
Mm-hmm.
March 2025, China, Japan, South Korea agreed to strengthen their trade ties in response to tariffs imposed by the United States. First of its kind in 5 years. Looks like there was a trade agreement first proposed in 2012, um, but it does say that part of it is based out of the tariffs of the United States.
Yeah, I think the current negotiations were spurred after Liberation Day.
Liberation Day.
The Liberation Day was the day where Donald Trump announced all of the big blanket reciprocal tariffs.
Hold on. Liberation Day. He called it Liberation Day. Package of 10% base on. Okay, right. I hadn't heard the term Liberation Day. I thought for a minute you were talking about July 4th, so I'm glad I got for
Oh yeah,
clarification.
Liberation Day was the day where he announced he pulled out the big chart of like the trade deficits and announced the reciprocal tariffs, quote unquote reciprocal.
Right. Yeah, it says reciprocal here.
The problem is that the way that he was calculating the trade deficits, I'm pretty sure came under pretty big scrutiny from economists. Now listen, I'm not an economist. I just know what I've read and what other people who are smarter on econ have told me. But I'm pretty sure the way that he determined who we have trade deficits with was very highly contentious amongst uh everybody that wasn't the Trump administration.
Yeah, it says in a memo signed February 13th, he directed the staff to research both monetary and non monetary trade barriers imposed by foreign countries against U.S. exports and to develop custom tariffs to counter and penalize each one. He instructed them to consider factors such as existing tariffs, exchange rates, and trade balances in their analysis.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Thank you, Caden,
again,
for the gifts. By the way, I love you, and thank you, Hex, for the gift as well. I appreciate you.
yeah, I think we're kind of at a standstill with this one, just because two things. One is I can't say definitively that I know exactly how this is all going to play out. I do think that
Mm-hmm.
if you create more materials and goods, that you're going to therefore generate revenue, right?
Kind of, but I mean, at the same time, if you're upping the so for lower level goods, if you're upping the import costs for certain manufacturing plants that use those goods as inputs, that's also going to raise prices on domestic manufacturers because you're raising the price of inputs.
Well, yeah, for like maybe low trade things, but like I think that's a little bit of an oversimplification, because if you've got something that's considered a low level tier, you're talking about
Mm-hmm.
not bringing that in and letting them go ahead and negotiate themselves to where we're still buying stuff off of Timu, right?
Well, I mean, Donald Trump is talking specifically about putting trades on steel. So, I mean, that would be
Sure.
a lower grade thing that Donald Trump is specifically trying to onshore. But in doing that, he's going to be raising
Well, we
input
don't need
taxes
to
on
import the
the
raw
companies that
materials
use
on steel,
steel. What's that?
but we don't need to import the raw materials and inputs for steel. Like we've got that here.
Sure, but why? I mean, like do you think that we would be making it cheaper here?
Initially, no, and that's going to be because, like I said,
Well, even in the
we
long run, like, do you think that that steel manufacturing would have the shot of being cheaper here? And do you think that we would have the labor force in order to work those kind of steel jobs, steel manufacturing jobs?
mm, I live near a place where they do it's called U.S. Steel
Mm-hmm.
and Griffin Pipes. So, and I know multiple people like who I went to high school with and whatnot that are working in these places, and so we're able to afford it now for some reason. So I don't see why
Well,
trying
we're
to
able
bring.
to afford it now at the degree that we do it, but if we're talking about onshoring all of the steel that we import, that's going to be a huge increase. It doesn't seem like our labor force A wants to work those jobs, and B, we even have enough people looking for jobs in order to fill these kind of jobs. We're going to be facing like super terribly low unemployment, which is going to have a, a bad effect on the economy. You don't want super low unemployment.
I think that especially with the onset that we're going to see with artificial intelligence's implementation, we're going to see a lot of jobs open up that otherwise would have taken way more people, just like we did when we had the onset of the internet and other technological innovations. And I
I would be much more sympathetic to this tariff plan if that was the case. If we had like a really bad employment problem, then I would be much more sympathetic to onshoring these domestic manufacturing jobs. But right now, like that problem hasn't manifested. If we're talking about doing this 20 years down the line, where all of these jobs are being automated and we have an unemployment crisis, then yeah, I wouldn't have nearly as big a problem with that.
Well, you can't wait until those things have started already rearing their heads before you start working on it, right? So AI is here. The AI that you and I use, ChatGPT, Bing, whatever, like this is the Pong days of AI. We're just now starting to wade in the kiddie pool, and like the explosive rate at which it's like moving forward, and it's already replaced jobs.
But do you also acknowledge that bringing all of these steel manufacturing jobs back, all of the ones that we that would account for all of the steel that we import, would also have a pretty like not good effect on the economy until those AI jobs get automated, or until those jobs get AI automated?
Well, the steel jobs I don't think are going to be automated. I think the ones that
Well,
are going to be most.
until the jobs that would be filled by AI, which would release all of the workers who would be going to these steel plants. If these jobs in the steel plants exist, um, which would also cost money, but if we say we onshore these these steel manufacturing jobs to the U.S. And AI hasn't automated these people's jobs into redundancy, so they're still working at those jobs that you're saying are going to be automated. You agree that that would also be a problem, right? Because there wouldn't be enough people to work those jobs, and we would just have like super costly investments into steel manufacturing with no workers to work them.
So I hear what you're saying. I I don't think that the AI replacement of industry is as far away as you think it is. I think that's probably where the difference is because, so like for example, marketing. Like I said, I've got a marketing degree. Right now, I'm currently going in for my MBA for supply chain management and logistics, right? And so, like looking at the new innovations that we have ramping up on AI, just in the last few years, is literally an exponential rate. And so, marketing, for example, it's like almost entirely out the door. Like you're going to still have like major like firms that
Yeah,
are
sure.
that have already made a name and whatnot, and people want their like expertise and their polished touch, but by and large, marketers are going to be replaced. Like that's
Another
going to be.
question I would have is, aren't these like lower level manufacturing jobs also like almost equally at risk of automation? Like, could we even guarantee that these are going to make American jobs?
So first, I'm not somebody who's worked in the steel industry. I work manufacturing, but I don't work steel. What I work on is more like textiles, right? Which is
Mm-hmm.
another industry that's almost gone because of offshore. Um, as far as those jobs, though, they're not easily automated. It would require. It's pretty tricky to take out the floorman jobs as far as manufacturing goes, and I would imagine that's the case for steel too. Again, I don't work steel, but I
Okay,
know
I
for
mean
textile.
that's just something I would have to, I'd have to see. I don't know for sure. That's not my area of expertise. Econ in general is not my area of expertise. The problem is that honestly, even if I granted you that the tariffs were a good idea, I don't think that's been demonstrated. But even if I were to grant you that, there's still like 20 other things that are just as bad, if not worse, or absolutely worse, that Donald Trump also has running against him. Oh boy, non-fawn here.
Oops. Did you hear what I said? I think I clocked out for a second.
No, you were out of the app.
Oh yeah, my battery's going out, so that's what that was.
Yeah, you're good.
So yeah, as far as that goes, I think those other ones are going to be a little bit more ideological in nature and more, than the tariffs.
Well, look, hold on, real quick. I mean, if you guys are, talking about, automation and thing, and like
Yeah, I
how
know. You
easy
fucking you heard the
it is to
bat
automate
signal. I know.
how easy it is to automate these jobs and everything. Look, the thing I want to mention is like, I think automation has been probably the primary driver of the decline in manufacturing jobs. I think it's actually probably a bigger factor than trade has been. And if I mean, there's a few different points of evidence for it. One, I mean, there's just some like studies we can look at that find like, hey, it seems like the automation played a bigger role than import competition. But also like if you just look at the trend of manufacturing employment in the U.S., it's been on like a extremely like stable trend since like the 1950s, and like that's not something you would expect to see if trade was responsible for these job losses, because you would expect like, oh, after we signed a trade agreement, the trend would like shift downward significantly, but you don't see that.
And what is that trend?
It's like what do you mean? It's a downward sloping trend. I don't know what the exact percentage is, but like,
Do you have a ballpark estimate on what the rate of decrease of American jobs in manufacturing would be due to foreign competition?
I know it's about, so like the highest estimate is that like is like at most 40% of manufacturing jobs were lost due to import competition. But that's I think that's a rather high estimate. I think they don't properly account for American exports as well. But
Yeah, sorry, I just didn't want to make you have to listen to me typing while I did a search because I was curious.
No problem.
My keyboard's pretty loud. Let's
Trust me,
see.
I know the struggles of a loud keyboard. Trust me, I know.
well, what are you looking up exactly?
Pretty cool for gaming, but sometimes can be disruptive in a TikTok.
Yep.
I typed literally this into Bing. How many jobs are lost in manufacturing due to foreign competition? From 1998 to 2021, the U.S.
Well,
lost.
I know vaguely the absolute number is like at most about, I think it's 2.4 million.
More than 5 million.
No, no. Are you looking at the EP? Are you looking at the Robert D. Scott thing?
No. I'm looking at
What are you-
epi.org.
Yeah, no. That's Robert D. Scott. Yeah, I have a lot of issues with Robert D. Scott's methodology. So Robert D. Scott looks at just a bilateral trade deficit. He looks at how much the bilateral trade deficit has increased with either China or Mexico, depending on which one you're looking at. And he assumes that a bilateral trade deficit decreases U.S. or substitutes U.S. production 1-to-1, and then he also doesn't properly account for the increased investment in the U.S. that the trade deficit brings. So, the first relevant thing, obviously, a bilateral trade deficit doesn't decrease U.S. production 1-to-1, right? Think of when we started trading with China, right? We were not, making shoes in the U.S. already. So to the extent that we started importing shoes from China, a lot of that is because China, stole jobs from Vietnam, who we were importing shoes from before. So it's obviously very flawed to say, this bilateral trade deficit, represents 1-to-1 U.S. production displaced. And then, too, like I said, I don't know how technical I want to get, but basically, any money that's going to the trade deficit in these cases, dollars are really only good in the U.S., right? So if we supply a country dollar by buying goods from them, they either buy U.S. goods, in which case we have balanced trade, or they don't buy as many U.S. goods as we buy from them. So they end up taking those dollars and putting them into bonds or putting them into other investments, and that increases jobs too. Like obviously, government spending is probably the least efficient thing, and I guess bonds go to that. But like if they choose to buy American stocks, like that is probably a job supporting program too.
So, okay. Oh man, there's a lot to unpack. So first off, Robert E. Scott, I looked up who the guy was because I was curious who it was. You were saying was not somebody who was trustworthy, and the guy is like really accredited. I mean, he worked for L.A. Times, USA Today, New York Times, Washington Times, The Hill, Stanford Law and Policy Review. He's published a lot of academic journals. He's a doctorate in economics
Well,
from
the
Berkeley.
problem isn't necessarily that he's not accredited. The problem is
Right.
that it's just a disagreement with the methodology. That's I think that's fair.
I'm sure Robert E. Scott has other good work, but I know the exact thing that you're citing. It's like a piece he wrote for the EPI. I don't even believe it's published in any journal because it probably wouldn't actually get past like peer review or anything. But like the EPI is like it's like a union funded organization, so they have a lot of it. Not that I don't like unions or anything, but like they have a lot of things that are like very much in the interest of the unions that fund them. Restricting trade being one of them, because obviously some unions don't like that there is they have to compete against foreign firms in some cases.
Okay, so so let me make sure I'm summing you up correctly. Basically, so I'm looking at what they're saying, and they're saying 17.6 went down to 12.3 million workers, primarily in construction, manufacturing, and service sectors of total non-farm employment. And you're saying that, well, yes, while that may be true, there wasn't a one-to-one, and so why we may have lost employment in construction, manufacturing, services, and whatnot, that doesn't mean that we didn't gain other positions that they could work in at the same time, or that they didn't gain the same number that we lost? Please clarify that.
I think I'm confused by your question. My claim is simply that
The one-to-one.
automation played a large role in the decline in the manufacturing share of employment, as well as broader structural things. But
Okay, so I don't think that was the case of what initially started this whole thing. So, for example, when Ford left Detroit, which I don't know if you've been to Detroit, I've been there. It's tragic because you leave Detroit and you go under a tunnel and you come out in Windsor, Canada, and it's like night and day. It's like beautiful, hideous, right? And so when that happened, it wasn't due to automation, right? And so this goes back longer than 1950. And I think that
I think 1954 was when the manufacturing share of employment increased in the U.S. But like the U.S. did not have like that much free trade in the 1950s, right? So to like, I'm not denying that import competition has played a role in some of the decline in manufacturing employment. I just think all the evidence suggests that like automation was also an even bigger factor. Again, like even the economist who like Trump started when he was doing tariffs in his first term, David Arthur, who started the whole China shock phenomenon. He's the one that his paper estimates it was only like 40%. And again, I don't think they properly account for the increase in exports due to trade liberalization. But
why do you think that they didn't take that into consideration? It seems like a really obvious thing to take into consideration.
What the increase in exports?
Automation.
Oh, what? Who is not taking this into consideration?
Like you were talking about Robert E. Scott, right?
I mean, again, like I think I don't know what's going on in his brain, but I think I think a lot of it is simply because there's unions fund him, and like these unions are looking for economists who will confirm their beliefs. So I think I think a lot of it is that it's like the EPI was going out looking for someone who would defend this, and this guy came up with a way to try to defend it.
If we also tie back to where this originated, I brought up that manufacturing jobs would probably be automated if they came back anyway. So the problem of AI automating these jobs causing like a big unemployment thing probably wouldn't be fixed by these tariffs either, because if these jobs were to come back, it's possible that all of them would probably just be automated to save costs anyway. So there would still be a big pocket in employment. There wouldn't be like a
it's not going to boom the economy enough, is what you're saying.
Sure, yeah.
I don't agree with that either, because like if you look at what AI sticks into replace, like I said, marketing is a major area where you're going to see like major overhaul, and because marketing is easily done by AI. So it is other stuff like digital art. You can go up on Bing and get something that looks beautiful in just seconds, right?
Kind of
I mean, relatively. Let's be fair. It's not
relatively.
terrible.
It's
Not
not
a
terrible,
5 year.
but it's not good.
It's passable. It's being used a lot in different promotions and marketing. I'm not saying you can't tell the difference, but it's not hideous. Okay.
I'd give it like, so also like this is where like I'm a graphic design major, okay?
Sure.
Give it like a 4 out of 10. I give it like a 4 out of 10 as it stands right now.
All right. Well, a lot of people find that it's satisfactory for them. That's what I'm trying to say. And so that's all that's necessary.
Yeah, but a lot of consumers also really push back against anything that's AI generated because it generally isn't as good as whatever humans construct.
As far as art, I'll grant you that. Let's say that your field, and I hope it is protected.
Yeah,
Marketing,
it's not fully protected, but it's
automating systems, making spreadsheets and things like that, financial calculations, accounting and whatnot. A lot of that is really vulnerable to AI. That's not the stuff we're talking about bringing back. Plumbers, electricians, their jobs are not nearly as easily replaced by artificial intelligence. And so,
sure. But the thing that I'm pushing back on is that these tariffs. The thing that I'm pushing back on is that these tariffs would even necessarily give those jobs somewhere to go. Now, you could theoretically tie this back to what I was saying, where it's just going to create a bunch of jobs with no one to work them. I don't know if the tariffs are going to create the amount of jobs that would be necessary to offset the automation being done by AI. But you could technically flip this back on me and say, okay, well, if you're saying this isn't actually going to create new jobs, then you could also say that there's not going to be a big employment problem if you bring all of these jobs back, because there's not going to be a problem of people not being there to work them because they're going to be automated. But then the question I would ask at that point is like, why even do it?
Rob, can I just say, I really appreciate the intellectual honesty that you just demonstrated. That is honestly super rare amongst conservatives, liberals. It doesn't matter. So I appreciate that. You earned my respect. I'm following you.
Appreciate you, buddy. Yep.
No, I appreciate you, man. I want to have honest discussion with people, and I don't agree with you on everything. I'm not going to, but if we can talk honestly, then we can actually have a conversation. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. So but even if we do say that it wouldn't create this employment crisis. Now, I would say that completely goes against the messaging, because if the goal is to bring back manufacturing jobs, then you're just lying about it. But then two, I wouldn't even see the need to do that really.
Right. So here's where I think this is something we're overlooking here in this situation, is that if you bring back those manufacturing jobs and you're like, okay, well, we don't have the employees. Okay, well, the employees are coming from the ones that are AI is replacing. Okay, so then you're getting the employees. Right. I mean, this is all theory, right?
Sure, but I mean, there's also a theory to say that, these jobs actually wouldn't even be brought back because non-fun would know a little bit more about this, but it doesn't seem like tariffs are effective at bringing back manufacturing jobs. And two, and B, those jobs are highly automatable. So I don't even know in theory if that would, if you could say that it would bring back these jobs. Whenever I'm criticizing bringing back the jobs, I'm criticizing the aim of it. But practicality is a separate question as well.
Okay, so
I think the aim of it is misguided, but I do think it's unlikely that it's very unlikely the type of tariffs that Trump is doing is actually going to have a positive effect on total manufacturing employment. So it's literally over half of imports to the U.S. is about 54% are inputs for companies, right? So if we're tariffing, all the machinery, all the goods that these manufacturing companies use to make their products, that is literally functionally just a tax on their business, right? And that's going to hurt them. That's going to reduce employment.
As somebody who works in manufacturing, that's totally true.
Right. And then another thing is exports and economies of scale. So manufacturers. Actually, I'm going to dumbest down event. No offense.
It's appreciated. Listen, we're not econ autists like you are.
No, I know economies of scale. You're good. I'm tracking.
Right. Okay. So I mean, the relevant thing is that a lot of manufacturers rely on exporting to the biggest market possible to lower their average fixed cost, right? So for a lot of manufacturers, being able to sell to the entire world is very important. So tariffs, I mean, for one, just sort of I don't want to say intrinsically, I don't know what the right word is, but tariffs are always going to have some negative effect on exports, just because to the extent that we stop buying goods from overseas, there are less dollars supplied to other countries, and that means they have less dollars to buy our goods, right? So and actually, in a perfect world, there's something called Lerner symmetry theorem. It is actually a one-to-one equivalence between a tax on imports and a tax on exports. So 10% tariff and 10% universal tariff would equate to essentially a 10% universal tax on exports as well. But also, like, and this one's probably easier to see, is that tariffs obviously invoke a lot of retaliation. So like if we are tariffing EU countries, well, they're probably gonna tariff us back as well, right? And that hurts a lot of American exporters.
Right. And all right, we covered a lot in the last minute and a half. So I'm gonna go back to how do you pronounce your name?
Rinyald. Rinyald.
Can I call you Ren? Is that okay?
Yep, you can call me whatever you want as long as I know you're talking to me.
All right, Ren. So Ren was talking about, okay, he said A and B. The B part was that those things can be easily automated. These manufacturing positions cannot be easily automated beyond what they already are. Somebody who works in a factory, like these are not easy things to automate. I don't feel like that's accurate. The A part of what you said was that by putting these tariffs on, we're not even going to be bringing jobs back in the first place.
Well, not necessarily. So just for clarity, what I said is that it doesn't seem like these kind of tariffs are effective at bringing jobs back, like you're saying.
Right. And so my original question to that was going to be, well, then what's your problem with these tariffs? However, Jared went into the detail of, I think, and basically answered that question before I asked it. Is that correct, Ren?
I'm not gonna lie to you. I kind of phased out what Non-Fun was talking about. But to answer that question, my problem with it would be the increasing prices and like the short-term economic harm, which you pointed out. Like you agreed to right at the very
beginning. So that's pretty similar to what Jared was saying.
I mean, I think the bigger concern is just like overall society is more poor if we don't trade. Like just very broadly speaking, there are gains from trade. There are gains from countries specializing in certain things. Sure. At a fundamental level, it just enables us to use less resources to get the same amount of things, or depending on if there's gains and specializations, you can use less resources to get even more things. And I want society to be rich. I want us to be a rich country. I don't want us to be a poor country that doesn't trade.
I 1,000,000% hear you. You're absolutely talking like right up my alley. Okay, so
we're globalists here. So we're globalists here. Doesn't matter. What? Go ahead. Never mind. Doesn't matter.
Oh, okay. Yeah, absolutely. Specialization is like, general prevailing economic theory is if Bob can make it for 3 and Tom can make that for 2, and then they trade, then they benefit from not having to try and produce the same thing where they're not nearly as efficient, right? So, and averaged fixed costs per unit is very relevant to that too. And so therefore having the global market is important. Now, the way that you're talking about that being affected by the tariffs is partially, like I said, I totally agree with you as far as that being relevant to companies. However, you're also basing this off of like 2 different things. The second aspect that you brought up was retaliation. Again, he said that he did say that this was reciprocal. Ren said that he did not believe that was the case, and there were some things that was poorly considered. However, I do look at some of these tariff rates that I've been seeing online, and they're pretty sharp discrepancy between the tariffs that we're putting on other countries versus the other direction. And so it seems like we're the ones who are reciprocating now. And so
so for one, Trump's tariffs are absolutely not reciprocal. Like they didn't actually base his Liberation Day tariffs on how much countries are tariffing us. They literally just divided the trade deficit by how much we import from them, and he used that to set the tariffs on them. It's absolutely not reciprocal.
That's not what the White House memo said about how they were.
No. That is what it said. In fairness,
we just read it a second ago.
What did it say? Does it have the formula on there?
No, but it doesn't. It does list the different things that they took into consideration. Give me a second. Let me pull that back up here.
I mean, are you talking about the Liberation Day tariffs, or are you talking about the more
Yeah, we
recent
are.
tariff
We're talking
letters?
about the
No,
Liberation
yeah.
Day.
So the Liberation Day tariffs, they openly published a formula that they used. They said that we're going to divide the trade deficit that we have as a country by how much we import from the country. Now, in fairness, in the denominator, they did also multiply. I think it was like 0.25 times 4, which is just equal to 1. So the formula like literally is equivalent to just dividing the trade deficit by the imports from the country that we had. It was absolutely not at all like reciprocal, but.
Okay, so what we, and again, it sounds like you've got more of a formula. I'd be really interested to see what that formula is. What we read off was that he instructed them to consider factors such as existing tariffs, exchange rates, and trade balances in their analysis, and that's what it was based off of. So,
Well, technically, I mean that might be, that was like what he instructed them to do or whatever. But the way they came up, the way they determined, what they call tariffs and non-trade barriers, right, was simply that formula. And also, they literally just made like an elementary error in the formula as well, because they one of the variables they cited the study incorrectly for it, and if they had cited the study correctly, it would have the tariffs would have been like 1/4 the size.
okay. Okay. The BBC explained the calculation used by the U.S. Treasury, dividing U.S. goods trade deficit with a specific country by the value of goods imported from that country, and then dividing that figure by 2. Okay, so if we have a trade deficit, then the value of the goods that we're importing divided by 2. And then, okay, so for instance, the U.S. imports more goods from China than it exports to them. So there's a goods deficit of $295 billion, and the value of goods it imports is $440 billion. So then dividing 295 by 440 will be 67%, and dividing that by 2 and rounding up will be 34%, which is the tariff imposed on China. I mean, that's not. So what are you saying about that formula?
It's meaningless. It does not actually represent anything meaningful with regards to trade barriers.
Well, I mean, it's directly based on the trade deficits that we have with them, right?
But yeah, that's not a useful thing for considering like how uneven trade barriers are between countries.
Okay.
Really.
It doesn't take into consideration the tariffs that they have on us. Okay, I'm with
well, I mean, yeah, obviously it doesn't consider that, but it's, I mean, just more fundamentally, like it like just does not like tell you anything. Like even if the U.S. had balanced trade overall, we would still have trade deficits with some countries, but
Right.
that wouldn't represent them being unfair to us. That would just represent us wanting to buy a lot of goods from them. Well, they might not want to buy goods from us; they just want to invest in us. And investing in us isn't a bad thing.
Okay, thanks for walking me through that. I agree with you. It doesn't. It's not based on the. I'm not saying that it's based on the tariffs that they have on us. So, in that case, I think you're right. I think it would not be reciprocal, unless it's just blanket. Everybody's been screwing us, which is a possibility as well. but yeah, I agree. It's not nearly as cut and dry or reciprocal as I had been led to believe before. So, thank you.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Okay.
Making headway.
Listen, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and.
Yeah, I appreciate that. No, the reason that non-fun came up, by the way, is because I'm not typically an econ guy. All right, most of what I know is from basically DMing him for studies. But
yeah. Oh, I'll reply to your DM about immigration. By the way, I think I was like streaming well.
Yeah, yeah, you were. It's okay. But yeah.
All right. Well, I feel like we could probably have a conversation, the three of us, for a very extended amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to work in the morning, and my wife's been very patient with me.
Yeah, that's no problem.
I'm gonna go spend time with her because she's a lot cuter than you both.
I doubt it. I frankly I doubt that,
Yeah.
but that's okay.
Oh man, you haven't seen my wife, bro.
There's no one cuter than me.
She
Okay.
can hear you. She can hear you. She might find you, dude.
There's
She's
no one. There's
Hispanic.
no
You
one
better watch
cuter.
out.
There's no one cuter than me. That's the. It's. Listen. It's a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people, but it's just how it is.
I second that. I agree.
But hey, I
Well,
appreciate you coming up. It was great talking to you. Okay. Yeah, and feel free
Nice to meet you both.
if there's any other thing you want to ever chat about, feel free to either come up on the TikTok lives if I host them, or if you want to like have a chat about a specific particular thing, if you want to DM me, we can always do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be looking for you all.
Yep. Good chat.
Jared, do you ever go on live on your own live?
Not on TikTok, but on YouTube and Twitch and Kick I do. On YouTube, I'm non-fun, and on Twitch and Kick, I'm non-fun 420.
Okay. Well, I might bump into you here.
Hell yeah.
I don't really go on YouTube that much. I hate YouTube unless I have to.
Cringe.
It's not cringe. Google Alphabet Inc. is the worst. I know. Oh no.
It is cringe because I also stream on YouTube, so it is cringe.
Fair enough, but no. Alphabet Inc. is the devil.
Okay.
So. I mean,
Right.
I don't know how old you are, but YouTube used to be like basically like no ads, right? And now you can't get through like a
the mid rolls are really bad. I agree. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Mid rolls are bad.
I don't want to. All right, y'all have a good one.
Yeah, you too. I appreciate you coming up.